Hello, Flawless family. I am happy to be joined here today by mental health expert Dr. Alfiee Breland-Noble. Now, Dr. Alfiee is a pioneering psychologist and author, a founder of mental health nonprofit, the AAKOMA Project, and the host of the mental health podcast, Couched in Color with Dr. Alfiee. So I'm so excited to speak about her experiences and dive into a conversation about Black History Month. So thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So before we dive into all of that, at Flawless, we think it's important to always check up on one another. So my first question for you is, how are you truly, actually, really doing right now?
I actually am doing great. I think for me, I'm an extrovert, but I have a lot of introverted tendencies. And since I've been running the nonprofit, I founded and have been running the nonprofit. And since we've been under quarantine, it's really just been more of the same for me, with the exception of I can't get out as much as I used to because I all of my work is in one place. So I don't really have to go too far to work. And I didn't prior to the quarantine either. Um, I also traveled a lot when we weren't under quarantine because I do a lot of public speaking and traveling to studios to do like on camera and stuff in studio. And I don't like to travel. Like I'll do it, but I don't like to travel unless it's for vacation. Unless I'm headed to a beach. If I'm heading to a beach, count me in. But if I ain't headed to no beach, and it's like, ugh, it's like a slog. So I think the being stationary and pivoting to having the opportunity to do a lot of stuff in one place, right? Like I can sit in my office and just do a bunch of tapings all like that's wonderful for me. So I'm sorry and sad about, the looming, like we're sort of in it, mental health crisis that we're facing, especially among young people and people of color. That makes me sad, and not but by the same token, what that does is that has just brought more attention to the kind of work that you do at your foundation and the kind of work that I do personally and through my nonprofit. So that part of it has been good. So I guess I'm sorry for the circumstances, but I am happy that so many more people are starting to pay attention to the work that we both do.
100%. So thank you for being open and honest about that. And being from South Florida, I definitely feel you when it comes to the beaches. Definitely a great self-care hack is just spending some time on the beach. But like you were just talking about, you have a passion for helping people from all different backgrounds, and we really do see that in the work that you're doing. So, I mean, when did you first realize that this was a passion for you?
Probably when I was a kid. I have told this story many times before, so forgive me because I feel like every time I say it, I'm like, everybody's heard this, but they haven't. So, I grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and the only way that most people would know Virginia Beach is a couple of famous people: the Neptunes, Chad, who's Filipino, Pharrell, who's African American. We are not too far apart in age. Actually, we're pretty close in age. Timbaland, Timothy Mosley. So all of us grew up within honestly, like a 10-mile radius of each other. And Virginia Beach was not a place when we were kids that was very open to racial ethnic diversity. Now, I think if you ask some of my white friends and teachers and stuff down there, they, oh, no, 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 we loved everybody. But if you ask the kids of color, no. And so I think that's really where it started for me. And we were all high achieving kids. So there was a tiny group of us. It was like 8 of us, really. And I struggled to name the eighth one. I think there really were 7 of us who were African American, a couple who were Filipino, who were high achieving kids. And we always felt, I think, so isolated because you're really caught between two worlds. And so for me, that was the beginnings of it. And I have a godmother who is like me. I followed in her footsteps, a Howard University graduate. So I went to Howard, like our current vice president, Kamala Harris. So I was a few years behind her. And so my godmother said to me, I started out wanting to be a pediatrician. I don't think it was medicine. I think it was, I want to help kids. And I was just really and when you're little, I don't know about your background, but for a lot of Black folks, it's like doctor, right? Be a doctor, especially if you're like African or Caribbean, like Haitian. It's like the cool jobs are doctor and engineer. That's it. If you're not a doctor or engineer, like, what are you doing with your life? And so, but it was my godmother was the one who said, Alfie, I really think you should think about other ways to help kids. And honest, if I'm truly honest, I think the thing I always wanted to do was be a social support to kids. So that's what it was, because I wanted that. I had it in my family, but you could say I'm pretty chocolate girl. So being Gen X, chocolate wasn't cute back in the day, right? Other people outside of my house, that was not the thing, right? Because I'm the Halle Berry era. I don't look nothing like Halle Berry. She's beautiful, and I know now that I'm beautiful in my own way, and she's beautiful in her own way. But it wasn't like that when we were kids. It was sort of Halle Berry and ugly. Do you know what I mean? Like, just that's how it felt.
Colorism is a
Um,
thing for sure.
Right. And so that's what it was for me. So I knew I always wanted to be the kind of person who could look at another Black or brown child and make them light up, saying things to them like, I bet you are just as smart as you are beautiful. I bet you are such an amazing person. And because those are the things that I heard in my home. And that was really it for me. And so this trajectory really sort of led me on this path. And I had another mentor, Dr. Gil Trackman, a Jewish guy, who's God rest his soul, he's deceased. And when I was in graduate school and getting a master's, Gil was the one who said, Alfie, I think you really need to think about psychology. And I was like, okay. And so it was just this series of mentors who really poured into me, that led me where I am. And I'm telling you, I am in exactly the space I'm supposed to be. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So that was my journey.
No, I really appreciate hearing your story, especially you talk about I have a Haitian grandmother, so when you talk about being a doctor and engineer, that really just took me back.
Yep. You said South Florida, and I was like, he got some Haitian.
Right.
It's some Haitian people in his family. Because I'm just looking at, and I'm looking at your name. I'm like, yeah, it's some Haitian folks
So
in his
definitely,
family.
yeah, on my dad's side.
Yeah.
So no, that's awesome. But just hearing your story, and makes me think about the statistic that I read from the Kennedy Forum, who's an organization that we do a lot of work with, and they were stating that only 4% of psychologists and 2% of psychiatrists are Black, and those are two specific jobs. But I think that's something that you see all across mental health. So being within this community as a Black woman, like, what are your thoughts on how low these numbers are, and what can we do to increase representation in the mental health field, as well as, so not just like getting more people working in it like you and I, as I aspire to do, but then also just general access for to get more care like you're working on doing.
Yeah. So a couple things. One is I agree with you. Those statistics are not too different depending on which alphabet soup people have behind their name. So if you're talking about a licensed professional counselor, or MSW, like all of these degrees, they're not a lot of us. And part of that is because of the hostility of the environments, right? So people want to talk about is, well, Black people in particular, let's stay with Black folks. And when I say Black, I mean the whole diaspora, because we are a big, beautiful, diverse diaspora, right? So that includes Black Latinx, Black Caribbean, Black African immigrant, and what we traditionally think of as African American, I would say, which is people who are the descendants of those who were enslaved. And so when I look at all of us as a beautiful diaspora, I am reminded that, you and I both, I'm sure, have come through spaces where you can tell when you walk into the space, it's not a welcoming space for you. And often these things are actively hostile, some of these spaces. And I think that's a big reason why you see these numbers at 4 and 2%. There are plenty more people, I think, who want to go into the field. So part of my work and part of why we are a research organization at the AAKOMA Project is because we want young people of color, Black young people, to see themselves reflected in the research that is produced. We want them to understand you can be a PI or principal investigator. You can create the interventions that are going to be built to help your people, because if you create them, you're creating them from a space of sort of an inherent knowledge about what's important. Just like me looking at your last name and you saying South Florida and me thinking Haitian, that's what we call cultural competence. It's just sort of connecting the dots, right? So it's a guess, but it's an educated guess that's coming from a space of a cultural knowing. And I've learned recently that that's called cultural fluency, understanding how to engage and communicate. So for me, part of it is those hostile environments. Part of it is a lack of willingness, I think, on the part of many of these environments to create more welcoming spaces, so that when people like you said, you're aspiring, I would say you're already doing it, right? You're doing this. So you're already in the field, right? So just remember that you're already here. But we want you to keep going and keep prospering and we want your star to keep going like this. And so that requires, I think, older people like me, creating a space where you and other young people like you know that you're welcome. Those are the things that are going to increase the numbers. And the one final thing I'll say is this. I provide a lot of thought leadership around this whole area. And, I learned later in life what thought leadership was, but basically it's consulting. Like you're the person who comes and gives the ideas. And one of the people I provide thought leadership for is Charlemagne the God, whom everybody knows from the Breakfast Club,
Yeah.
with a new organization that he founded called the Mental Wealth Alliance. And part of my role in collaborating with them is to provide the thought leadership around how do we help young people who are of color and who are Black specifically of the diaspora recognize that there's a space for them in the mental health field. So I do that through my nonprofit, AAKOMA. I spent my 20 years of my career as an academic doing it. And my goal is to continue to do that by helping all the people who want to bring more young people into this space, helping them understand at an institutional level, what do they need to change to make these environments less toxic and more welcoming. That's what's going to increase the numbers. It's a lot of people who want to do it. We just got to create the environment to allow them to flourish as they try to pursue it.
That's amazing. I love how thought out that is, and that I've asked that question a lot of times, and like I really so you really have a game plan for this because it's something that really has to be addressed. So I definitely appreciate hearing that and hearing where your mind is with it. But speaking on the Coma Project and everything that you're doing, something that I saw that I thought was really cool. I was asking about, and it's you work to achieve optimal mental health. That's like your hashtag. It's like kind of your
Yes.
phrase. So what does this mean, and how do you go about doing this?
Oh, I love the question. Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Hold on. Okay, it froze for a second. So I know you can edit it. All right.
Yeah, well,
So the question of optimal mental health, period, full stop. I just need people to hear that. Optimal mental health is about what's good for you, right? What's good for you specifically, what's good for me specifically, I have two teenagers, what's good for my kids specifically, all these teenagers out here and young adults, what is good for each of us individually. And to me, it comes down to like three sort of the overarching framework of what we do with the coma. And there are three pillars. We want to raise people's consciousness, right? We want people to understand how important mental health is. We want to give people tools that they can use to cope, right? To help them manage, because some people are never going to get in front of you or me or any other mental health professional. It's just not going to do it for various reasons, right? Sometimes it's money. More often than not, it is stigma. People don't want to be crazy. We don't use that word in my house to describe people, an event, a thing. Oh, that was so crazy. But we don't talk about people with that word. And then the final thing is we want to ensure that we change the system, which is what I talked about before. So optimal mental health to me is helping people raise their consciousness by doing things like teaching them signs and symptoms, right? You got to know what you're dealing with in order to be able to tackle it. The second thing is optimal mental health is teaching people what to do, whether that's going to a mental health professional, whether that's doing stuff like me, like I'm a meditator. I practice mindfulness. I have been doing that for literally 20 years. Cultivating space. When you look around this room, everything you see is positive, like imagery, positive signs. I don't know if you can see, there's a picture back there of a person on a horse. That's the Native American. That's in honor. I have one grandmother who's Choctaw. I honor her because I can't imagine what it was like for her to enter into an interracial relationship in the 20s with my grandfather, right? Who was a descendant of those who were enslaved, right? And so maybe one or two generations out of slavery, this man marries this Choctaw woman. And that's a part of my lineage, but there's a whole big other lineage. And so understanding and honoring those aspects of my culture and cultivating that in my space means I bring the ancestors with me everywhere I go, which is cultural, right? For those of us who are of color, honoring the ancestors, that's a thing. And that contributes to your mental health because research shows us that the stronger your racial identity, whatever that is, whatever your racial identity is, if your racial identity is stronger, we've even shown this in the AAKOMA Project research, the better you feel about yourself. That's one piece of your identity, right? And so it is making sure that we incorporate all those things in teaching people how to care for their mental health. And then finally, optimal mental health is understanding when the system is sick. In other words, if you go as a Black person to pick a mental health provider and you go to the first person and that person doesn't understand, I don't know, like the difference between, I'm making something up, Puerto Rican and Dominican, well, then you don't need to be with that person no more because there's a difference, right? We all under the umbrella of Latino, but Latino can be of any race, right? And so, and understanding things like the island, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, and the history, right? You don't have to know all of it, but if you don't have an understanding about why a young person, for example, who one parent's Dominican and other parents Haitian, and maybe that's causing conflict in, how they're developing, you got to understand a teeny bit about the history of those countries to understand why that might be causing that young person problems. So to me, if you encounter that kind of situation, you should understand this is something wrong with this system. Let me go to another system, meaning another provider, and that you have a right to do that. And so for me, it really, optimal mental health is about all of those things together. If you understand signs and symptoms, if you know some coping mechanisms, and then when you get to the point where you want to go seek help, if you know that you're empowered to switch, if this person is not getting it for you, that to me is you are functioning in optimal mental health. And that's going to look different for you, me, and each person. So that's what it means to me, optimal mental health.
Oh, that's that is amazing. And when I hear what you're saying, what you're speaking, like it reminds me of something that I heard where for so long, kind of like a response or a clap back to, black people that speak out of being hurt or harmed or whatever is, the race card or why do you make everything about race or but the reality is if you look deep enough, everything is about race. You know what I
Come
mean?
on, tell the
So
truth.
much that goes back to like the foundation of this country and just all the little details of the systems that we work through today comes down to race. So I mean, being in Black History Month, I think it's especially important that we talk about that and we talk about the racial injustices that have just been such a pivotal discussion for all of us this past year or so. And it was really highlighted. We were going through a double pandemic. You know, what I mean, yeah, we had the healthcare side of things, but also the racial side of things. So I just want to see like any advice you have for our people who, we have these shared experiences. We've never met before, but we have a lot of the same shared experiences. What advice do you have for us who are all just so stressed out and just tired and exhausted?
I think a couple things. The first thing I always say is you come first, right? Now, in Black family, we're going to keep it real. In Black families, it's always about more about the unit than it is in the culture than it is about us as individuals. And I think in many cultures, I'm just thinking about the Black diaspora in general, we are taught, and I think about Latinx culture too. I'll say for women, women are taught that your job is to take care of everybody else, right? Like emotional caretaking. And I think this is a gross generalization where often culturally, historically, men of color, Black and Latinx men in particular, are taught your job is like the external financial sort of, right? That's your job is you got to, and
Right.
protector, right? That's what we're taught. Now, I think we're trying to unlearn a lot of these things and not be stuck in these gender roles. I get that. But I think traditionally, this is how we're socialized. And so if the women or those who identify as feminine, are taught you got to take care of everybody else. Where's the part of that conversation that says got to take care of yourself?
Mm,
Right? For the brothers, if everything is about grow up and be a protector, whether you're heterosexual, whether you're part of the LGBTQ community, those roles are still there. You're socialized with those roles. And so one of those roles is to be the protector. Okay, but there's no part of that that says you got to protect yourself first, right? You can't protect anybody around you if you're not well taken care of. So I think because, and it may be different depending on your generation, right? Is stronger, I think, for veterans and baby boomers, kind of sort of. We were latchkey kids like Gen X. We kind of half raised ourselves, let's be honest, because our parents were working. And then for millennials and Gen Z, it's really more about how do we break these intergenerational trauma? How do we break these chains? And I think we're all trying to unravel a lot of that. And so I think for me, thinking about putting yourself first is radical, right? Like when Audre Lorde and some other people back in the day were like, self-care is like an act of political warfare. I feel that. I understand what they're saying, but they were sort of like these sages and like prophets out there in the wilderness. And I don't know that everybody sort of really understood what they were saying, but that I take that very seriously, that self-care is one of the most radical acts of resistance as a Black person, as a Latinx person, as an Asian or a Native person, right? So often our Native people are erased in terms of how we, having these conversations. But if you can focus on taking care of yourself first, it doesn't make you selfish. If anything, it makes you better able to care for the people around you. So my thing is, to me, it's really about, in this day and age of these dual pandemics that are still raging, you putting yourself first, you specifically putting yourself first, me putting myself first. That's like radical, because our ancestors were not allowed to put themselves first, right? The women were raising other folks' babies and giving of themselves all day. Think about slavery. And then had to come home and take care of their kids. Our kids got scraps, right? For the brothers, you sometimes had to stand by and be emasculated during slavery, watching what people were doing to the women, and you couldn't do anything because you had to make a choice. Either I'm gonna stand up and I might die, and then who gonna look out for them? Or I'm gonna watch this and be traumatized, but I still physically will be here to take care of them in other ways. And so that lineage, just because time changes, that's in our DNA. And so I feel like the most radical thing we can do as Black people is stand up and say, I come first. I'm gonna take care of me. And y'all gonna wait till I pour into me, then I'll come help y'all. I can handle y'all later. And so, but there's nothing wrong with that. So for me, that's really what it's about. And being vocal, just like I appreciate the question. I'll tell you what filled me with pride when you said some being a Black woman. All I heard was Black woman. I was like, yes, that's what I am. I'm a Black woman all day, Black girl magic. That's important for you to feel that sense of pride in who you are and for it to be named by other people. Everybody wants to feel seen, heard, and valued. And I think part of the radical act is we show up for ourselves in that way first, and we require that other people show up for us in the same way. If you can't see, hear, and value me, all three of them things, not one or two, then you can't be in my space. You can't be in my life. And that to me is what we need to do for ourselves in Black History Month and every single day, to honor the fact that we're here, to honor the fact of what we come from, what we have come from, and to honor the gift that the ancestors have given us by making sacrifices so that we can celebrate what they do in Black History Month. And then someday, many years from now, somebody's going to celebrate what you and I are doing as part of Black History Month. So just taking care of ourselves is, I feel like, the most important thing we can do.
Yeah, I mean that just so many gems that you just dropped just dropped just now. And especially like, the first thing I want to acknowledge is you saying like the pride you have as being a Black woman, because as you said for so long, especially if you dive into like the colorism debate within our community, but being a Black woman, I mean, to this day is just so hard. You often hear, the Black woman is the most disrespected person on earth because you're Black and you're a woman. And,
Yep.
those dealing with both of those things, it's just, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
And then also, like the self-care is like one of our biggest pillars at Flawless. And that's
Yes.
something that I've learned myself. Cause like you said, going through life, always putting other people first. You know what I mean? And learning that, well, if you want to be successful at helping the people that you love, you got to help yourself first. And then again, like I'm just rethinking about everything you just said, because there's just so much knowledge in the words that you spoke. But one thing that I learned through the protests over the past year and whatnot, and it really opened up a lot of eyes to people who
Yes.
don't look like
Yes.
us, to people who don't experience what we go through.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I was never really sure why George Floyd was the one that pushed the needle, because they're all heartbreaking. But I just think about Tamir Rice was really, really tough for me. A 12-year-old boy, you know what I mean? Trayvon Martin was the first one for me, being from Florida, seeing a kid that looked like me in his football uniform
Yes.
and whatnot, seeing the way that was handled and whatnot. It's just very interesting how George Floyd. It could have been because we were in COVID, we're all home on our phones. But George Floyd really pushed the needle for a lot of people who weren't really listening to us before, and it really opened up an opportunity to talk about it. One thing that I do, or I like to do, is tell people a lot of what you just said, that slavery is a lot worse, as bad as you imagine it, as bad as you think it is from the movies you've seen, from what you've heard. Slavery is a lot worse than that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? There's the stories that I've heard, the things that I've researched. It's a lot worse
Yes,
than you can
Lord.
ever imagine.
Yes,
So,
Lord.
with all that being said,
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts on what can we do to help those people who honestly and earnestly want to be an ally, want to support, want to do their part in our fight, in our struggle. What can you say to them on how they can be better at that?
Ooh, that's a beautiful question. But first thing I want to do is hold space. I know you're interviewing me, but I'm hold space for you because as a young person, listening to you say Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, George Floyd, I have a son, and my son is probably not too much younger than you. My son is 14.
Okay.
And when I think about my kids just made a video for Black History Month for their school. They're both in high school, 9th and 11th grade. And I, I just had to stop in my tracks because I really had to like bring myself back down because I was just gonna burst into tears. They showed me the video, it was a little clip. They pretended like they were going on a drive. And my daughter's she's in the process of getting her license. And long story short, the skit was my son says to my daughter, make sure you turn your turn signal on because you remember what happened to Sandra Bland. And it just ate, oh God, I just was like,
Man.
right, 14 and 16. And so, listening to you, looking at you, seeing that beautiful face and knowing that beautiful brain is in there and knowing that part of what you have to carry with you is a Tamir Rice, is a Trayvon Martin, is a George Floyd, as a young Black man, I get choked up just thinking about it. So I want to hold space for you and acknowledge that I see and I understand. I don't know all of it because I'm not a Black man, but
Mhm.
I understand. So I have to say that first. It's a lot. It's a lot that you young people have to deal with. So in any event, I think that what I've learned is there's allies. This is all new. I just learned this maybe in the last month or so. There's accomplices, there's comrades, there's co-conspirators,
Mm.
and there's abolitionists. Me and that abolitionist language, we gonna ride because I love it. Because it's the idea that you need to be active with the person who is disempowered to empower them for their own liberation, right? And hold on, it froze again. Okay. And not only are you empowering them for their own liberation, but you recognize when it's time to take a back seat.
Mhm.
And if you have privilege, your duty is to use your privilege to support somebody else in a way that does not overtake their own agency to support themselves. So, what I'm learning is that allyship, and I had never thought about it like this, allyship supposes we're starting on equal footing because I'm here, you're here, and like we both have the same level of privilege that we can sort of build on together. Now, different people probably say different things, but what I'm learning is I need you to be more than that because all of us have privilege and all of us have places where we're, disempowered and we're not privileged. You and I are Black. And so the way other people treat us, and I really want people to hear me say this, the way you and I are treated and experience the world around racism, it is not because we are Black people. This don't come off. This
Mhm.
is immutable. This doesn't change, right? Maybe you go out and get a little sun, and it gets a little darker. But for the most part, we are who we are. And we don't want it to come off. But other people can change their attitudes. Other people can change their behavior. Other people can stop being racist and be anti-racist, right? Ibrahim Kendi, that everybody's really on that, how to be anti-racist. So to me, it is more about if you have privilege. I have privilege as a heterosexual, upper middle class, well educated, right? Black woman. I know that. If I want to partner with someone who doesn't have privilege. Say I have a girlfriend who's lesbian and we're in the workplace and she's experiencing discrimination around people being homophobic. I have to start by asking her, what can I do? What do you need? How can I support? And then I have to say, here's what I have observed, because I don't want her to think it's her job to educate me.
Mhm.
I can say, here's what I see, but maybe I'm missing things. So you fill in the blanks for me, and then I need you to tell me what should I prioritize for you, with you, and how can I support you? And then come back and say, here's some thoughts that I have because I've taken in the information she's given me and gone through a process. But you hear how I act, that's steps,
Mhm.
right? You got to put in some work. And so to me, that's what an abolitionist is. You are putting in work to try to dismantle these systems of oppression. And I think for anybody who wants to be an ally or who's thinking about being an ally, to answer your question directly, to go do some research about what is an ally, what is an abolitionist, what is a co-conspirator. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, look at those terms, figure out which one of those you want to be, and then educate yourself on your own and then step in with the people you want to engage and support and figure out collaboratively. I think that's the key. Collaboratively, what can we do together? Because I don't want people coming to ask me 50 million questions and they haven't done any homework, right? I'm not here for that. I'm not here to be your professor for like your radical awakening around race. Ain't anybody got time. But what I can do is collaborate with you and we can be co-conspirators. And I have to shout out Asian American girlfriend, Dr. Helen Sue, because she calls them comrades. And I think in her mind, comrades and co-conspirators is sort of the same thing. So for me, that's really what it is. We got to be proactive, right? Them people that I saw out in the street in, oh God, I think it was either New Zealand or it was Australia, marching for Black Lives Matter,
Mm-hmm.
right? Indigenous people. I was like, "Woo, yes, that's what
Yeah.
take it over. That's what I want. Shut the city down. That's what I want you to do, to have that kind of passion for me and my liberation, because that's the kind of passion I'm going to have for other underserved, underrepresented, marginalized groups. I want us all to be free. So my allies, I'm going to need you to help us get free, and we need to do it together. So that's what I would say.
So again, just hearing everything you're saying, and it's a lot, because not only are we dealing with things that we have to go through, but then as you said, like, but then people that do want to help, honestly, and earnestly, it's exhausting to then help them or to catch them up to speed. It's something I've been dealing with since I came out the womb, and now you're just stepping in. It is exhausting. So much of our conversation really is exhausting because we have to really think about our traumas
Yeah.
and whatnot. So I want
Yeah.
to go back to something that we both prioritize, and that's me self-care. So
Yeah.
I want to know, like, through all of this and through what's going on, like, what are some like actual things that you do,
Yes.
some of your self-care acts that you do to make sure that you still got it, you're still going.
Yes, couple things. So every morning I wake up, the first part of my day starts with mindfulness, meditation. Before I touch my cell phone or anything, before I touch any device, I have to, like, literally, when I open my eyes in the morning, I'll just lay there. And the first 10, 15 minutes is mindfulness meditation. Then the second 15 minutes is like my worry time because I'm anxious. So I forgot to say that I do struggle, not struggle, but I am managing anxiety. It's a part of my lineage, it's in my DNA, and I am actively working on it so that it doesn't control me. I have to control it. And so that second 15 minutes is worry time. That's when I'm thinking through all the stuff, either last night or the stuff that's coming up, because that's what anxious people do. You're always thinking ahead or behind. You're never in the present.
Mhm.
So I give myself the time to worry because I know it's going to be there, right? But the first thing I have to level set every day, and I start with mindfulness. So I set my intention for the day. And I talk about that on my Instagram page, how to set an intention on my, I think it's IGTV. Then after that, exercise. So my morning is always, so, at this point, I'm honest about it. So anybody who reaches out to me and wants to do stuff, they know they're not going to get me before 11 a.m. Why? Because before 11 a.m., that's me taking care of me. I have to come first. And I work for myself. I run a foundation. I do my own media work. Like, I have a team who works with me so that, but I had to work to get there. I had to build all of that and organize that and create a space in my life where I could do that. Because for 20 years, I was an academic. I started when I was 10. That's a joke. But for 20 years, I was an academic and I couldn't do that. It was other people's timetable. So I'm not saying that everybody has the flexibility and freedom. And I know it's a gift that I have that. But what I am saying is that I consciously and actively cultivated that over time. Right? I didn't just wake up one day and say, okay, I'm never doing a meeting before 11. It was like sort of, right? 'Cause you had recurring meetings. So I said, we're going to have to change these meetings. So I'm giving you 6 months runway. And, in the next 6 months, 6 months and one day, I'm not doing them on meetings at this 9:30 meeting on Wednesday mornings or whatever it is. And so that's important. But that time is not spent idly. That time is spent exercising, right? So I got on one of my yoga shirts today. Like, I literally, right before we started taping, had just finished. I do aerobic exercises, a bunch of different things. And I'm terrible at yoga, but I do practice some. I try. But that's what happens in the morning up until 11. And so then by 11:30, I'm in a better headspace to be able to function throughout the day. I have to do that because I'm also a mother. I have a spouse. I have a aging parent who lives with me. And so those are all my jobs too. My 16-year-old had to remind me of that. She's like, Mom, you got like 5 jobs. I was like, yeah, you're right. Because when this job ends, those jobs start. Right. So anyway, it is making sure that I'm not overloading myself. I have a wonderful operations manager at the AAKOMA Project. Her name is Tracy Devers. Tracy watches my schedule like a hawk. She don't play. So if anybody deals with, they're like, nope, she can't do that. Nope, she can't do that. Here are your windows here, right? And she's like, and so, but she and I've had those conversations. And so I try to cultivate a space for me that allows me to put my mask on first. Like when you fly, right? Yours goes on first, and then you can put the mask on the other people who might need your support. They may not even need you by the time you get your mask on. So those things are important to me. Reading and making sure that what I'm taking in, like all media, all forms of media, print, online, TV, for the most part, 75, 80% of it really needs to be positive. Now, I do have a penchant for Netflix European crime shows. I'm kind of obsessed with them. They buck wild. Let me keep it real. They are buck wild. But I have to, that's my little indulgence. But other than that, for the moment, like right now, I'm stuck on Money Heist. It's so good. But I'll even oh my God, Money Heist
Yeah,
is so intense.
so much anxiety. So much anxiety. It's so
Right?
intense.
Right? So I have to literally like stop. Like last night, I think I'm on like episode 4, and I'm not gonna give anything away. But I was like, wait a minute, I can't take this because it's like little fireworks all the time, and ping, 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 and I'm too anxious. So I was like, well, okay, we done. And I know enough about my body that when I feel it, I'm like, mm-mm. So I know it might sound a little weird to people, but I have to manage my anxiety like that because that's what the TV show is for, is to like evoke all these emotions. So it's really sort of always being mindful. And I don't get it right 100% of the time. And so that's another thing, practicing like forgiveness. Like when I mess up, if I don't get an exercise that day, if I overschedule, allowing space to forgive myself. And then I would say the final thing is something that I do every Wednesday on my IG page. And I'm not even going to lie, I go back and watch it. I call it Mental Health Mantras for Marginalized People. I live by those mantras. So I was telling somebody yesterday, I did an interview yesterday, and I don't even know why I'm looking sideways. But anyway, I did an interview yesterday, and I was telling them, I will go back and watch those IG, I'm sorry, they're reels. I will go back and watch those mindfulness reels. I do them every Wednesday. And one of them was there is joy in my liberation. That thing, that does something to me to repeat that to myself. And another one that I had on that same one was in every moment I am liberated to choose. I have the freedom to make choices that your and my ancestors did not have. They could not control their day. You and I can do that. And so, like, just honoring that by making choices, positive, conscious choices. So, those mantras, the mindfulness, the exercising. I am kind of a gym rat, although my gym is in my home now because I ain't going to nobody's gym. Coronavirus is real. I ain't doing it. I'm not touching that stuff. So, those are the things that I do.
No, that's awesome. Definitely appreciate hearing your routine. And yeah, Money Heist. That's the best, man. That's the best.
It's so out of control.
I know
Yeah.
I took a whole break from watching. I had to watch something a little more fun. Just
Yes. Yes, they don't be
yeah.
playing in Europe with these shows. And that one in Elite. Elite kind of creeps me out because I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's supposed to be
I've seen
kids.
it.
All these folks in their 20s and 30s playing high school kids.
Mhm.
But wow. I had to like take a break from it too because they're supposed to be kids. And some of the stuff I see, I'm like, oh Lord.
Facts.
So yeah.
Well, okay. My last question for you here today is: we like to dream about creating a flawless world. It's kind of a concept that we have. For me personally, I think of a flawless world as like just a place where we move on from this world of discrimination, whether it's racial, whether it's sexuality, gender, whether it's mental health, whatever it is. We move away from a world of discrimination. But after such a tough year, what? First off, what is your flawless world? What do you think makes up a flawless world for you? And what's giving you hope that we are moving towards that flawless world?
I'm gonna answer it backwards because the second part is easy. What's giving me hope? What's giving me hope is young people like you. That's what gives me hope. What gives me hope is young people, like all the young people we work with at the AAKOMA Project. What gives me hope is young people, like we have an event coming up. I think you all might have, I'm not sure. I think you all might have shared it for us. I'm not sure. But
Paint
with,
sip.
with Lexi Underwood, the paint and sip.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
With Lexi Underwood, that gives me hope. Ryan Pete, Holly Robinson Pete started. I just think about all these young people I see who are like activists out here specifically around mental health. And the 3 or 4 I just named are all Black young people. That makes my heart sing. Obviously, because I love mental health, because that's my thing. It's always been my thing. Even before I knew it was my thing, it was my thing. So that gives me hope. And so that's the easy part. My kids give me hope, obviously, my own 2 children. And I think one of the things that, like the former part of your question, um, for me, a flawless world is a couple things. One is I'm gonna be selfish first. It's a world where I get to be freely, 100% joyfully myself. Period. Everywhere I go and everything I do, I am just me. I can show up on a stage and presenting some of my research, and I can drop references to Grown Woman by Beyonce. That's my jam. I love that song, right? Or I can drop references to I'm an old school hip hop head. Today when I was doing exercising, they were doing like I went to school with Puffy. So like we were same year. I think he left a little bit. He left when we were juniors, I think, and then like turned to a billionaire. But anyway, um, like it was a whole riff. It was Lil Kim, Fake Ones. It was like I want to be able to have that, right? Oh God, and the remix to Flavor in Your Ear, one of the all-time greatest rap songs in the history of the world. Let me tell you something. Woo! Love it. But I want to be able to bring all of that part of who I am with me into the scientific work that I do. Being radically, freely me. That's a flawless world. And other people being radically, freely themselves. And a lot of times when people say it, you'll hear people say, yeah, but if everybody's just free to do whatever, we're going to have lawlessness. I don't agree with that. I think for most of us to be free, all we're really looking for is just to be 100% of who we are. And that may change over time, right? But 99% of the time, not being 100% of who I am is not hurting anybody else. Do you know what I'm saying? Like to me, being 100% of who I am is I walk in with locks one day and the next day I got on a wig and I don't have to hear no comments about my hair has changed.
Right.
Right? I love your hair. You wearing your hair the way that you do. People don't make any assumptions about that. Don't ask me no questions about my hair. No, you cannot touch it. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes, it is shorter today than it was yesterday. It's a wig. Get over yourself. Do you know what I mean? Freely, radically me as I come into a Zoom meeting with a head wrap, that's not a thing. No, if you gonna say something, oh my gosh, I love your head wrap. Okay, keep it moving. Right now, oh, that's interesting. No, it ain't interesting. This is my culture. Black women wear head wraps. Anybody got time with these 50 million Zooms we got to be on all day? To me, that's like radically, freely me. To walk into a meeting in my jeans and red bottoms and my Gucci belt if I want to. Do you know what I'm saying? And there's no questions about, oh, why is she dressed like that? Do you know what I mean? Or I'll give you a perfect example. All through my career, all I ever heard was I worked at Duke University. I also worked at Georgetown, both in departments of psychiatry. And people would literally say stuff like, you're always so dressed up when you come to work. Why was I dressed up? Because if I came in looking like some of my colleagues, people were going to have something to say about it. Like, I don't take it seriously. I'm not professional. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? That's what you get. But when I come in dressed to the nines, because I'm socialized to believe I gotta be, 2, 3, 4, 5 times better to be taken right as equal.
Mhm.
Radical freedom means I don't have to do any of that. And I don't think about none of that. I just show up however I want to show up. And so, yeah, I love red bottoms and all them other fancy shoes. I'm a fashionista. I love clothes, but I want to be able to just show up. So to me, a flawless world is where you get to do that. I get to do that. Everybody gets to do it. Just be free and be who you are.
No, that's a great point. The fact that a lot of times our culture is not professional. Our hair is not professional. Like you said, like other people have the privilege to dress down, and it's, oh, he's just dressing down today. He's just chilling today. But us dressing down, God forbid I ever pull up to work or pull up anywhere to class in a do rag or something like that.
Oh my God.
Right.
Right?
So and those are microaggressions a lot of people just aren't aware of that we have to deal with time and time again. But
That's right.
I just want to thank you for your wisdom today, your inspiration today. Before we go, I'll make sure everyone, whenever you're watching this or seeing this or hearing this, all of Dr. Alfie's credentials information will be in our description, so you can check her out and follow her all over social media, check out her websites and her projects. But I did mention you're an author, so I don't know if you want to tell a little bit about the book that you had.
Yes.
Put that on blast.
Sure. So I appreciate that. So that's my science, right? And the book is called Community Mental Health Engagement with Racially Diverse Populations. There are like 10 chapters in it. We cover many racial ethnic groups. And what's unique about the book is it's an academic book, but it's a practical application book. So I think it's accessible to anybody, right? And the other thing that's super unique about the book is that the authors are not only traditional academics, whatever the heck that means, but it also includes what I call community scientists and community academics. So co-authors, every author in the book was required to co-write, and co-author the book with people with lived experience from community. So we have a chapter, one of the chapters that I contributed to the book is the work that I did with the AAKOMA Project with a Black faith community in the DC area. Two of the authors on the chapter are church members. We're with from that Black faith community, and one of them actually is white because it's a multiracial church, predominantly Black. So that's just an example of what I mean. And why that's radical to me is because so often we make science feel like it's only the purview of this tiny little group of people, right? And you're not a real scientist if you don't have a Nobel Prize. And I don't know how many Black people have won. I don't know if there have been any for science.
Mm.
The Peace Prize is a different thing, but I would be hard pressed to name one or more than one for science. So that's what people think of when they think of science. When science, I always say there are multiple ways of knowing. So there's so much more to science than just what traditional people say science is. And so just the book is really about how do we create science collaboratively, going back to comrades, right? Abolitionists, right? Making this space equitable for everybody. So that's the book. And I appreciate you asking me about it.
Definitely, definitely. So go out and get you a copy. And thank you again, Dr. Alfiee.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. And good luck with this project. And good luck, my brother, with everything that you are doing. I just want to wish you like only success, joy, and happiness.
Thank you so much. You enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too.